Okay, today is May 5th, 2020. Welcome to MSU Turf Team Update. Once again, today I have Dr. Jeff Andresen from Michigan State University, the state climatologist, to give us a short and long-term weather forecast for the current conditions. So, Jeff, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Kevin. And I'll move over to my presentation, which it probably looks an awful lot like last week if you were looking. And there's a reason for that, and that's because our outlook is is very, very similar to what it was, although there actually are some changes. Some of them are not so good. On the cover here, on our first image, though, what you see are forecast temperature departures from normal this coming Saturday morning. And you've heard or been made aware of, we have more of the same pattern, but essentially we have right now, we're under the influence of a Canadian origin high pressure system with much cooler weather after a very nice weekend. But there's an even colder air mass coming here late in the week. And what you see here is that at least the footprint of that air mass, all of the blues and purples here are below normal temperatures, in many cases more than 20 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. And what we're essentially setting up though for is certainly the risk of a several day frost freeze event. We probably will see more frozen precipitation at times during this, but it is essentially an unusually cold air mass for this time of the year. Looking here at the weekend review, surprisingly, and I was actually really surprised, the mean temperature departures here for the week, I would have guessed would have been below normal like most of April was and the first part of May. But if you remember, we did have some fairly mild weather here at the end of the week and certainly over the weekend. And those values really pumped our means are up higher than I thought they would be. So for the state as a whole here over the week, depending on where you were, our mean temperatures range from a little bit below normal, a degree or two in the northern part of the state, to actually a couple degrees above normal. That again, was a little bit unexpected. Here you can see that especially across the southeastern portion of lower Michigan. Precip-wise, we had one major weather system of that very, very slow area of moving area of low pressure late last week. That was the big precip producer for at least portions. And again, depending on where you were, our precipitation totals for the week ranged from less than a quarter of an inch, and that was the driest part of the state, the southeastern lower peninsula, to a wide swath from west central through the northern lower and into the eastern upper peninsula where more than 2 inches was picked up. And in some of these areas, we actually had some reports up near 4 inches. So remembering again that the total precip for March is actually not even 3 inches. We had more than a normal month's worth here just in a couple days late last week. So depending again on location, everything from soil's actually somewhat dry right now, a lot of field work going on in the eastern part of the lower, to where we've been for most of the last several months, and that is excessive or saturated soils. And that's certainly the case, again, across western and northern parts of the lower peninsula. Our degree day totals still lagging significantly behind normal with the, well, depending on the temperature departure you just saw here, a little bit less solid blue on the map than there was last week, but still most of the state currently 1 to 2 calendar weeks behind normal, or where typically is the case here at this point of the year. And given the outlook, not going to be many changes, probably a little bit more solid blue color by next week. On our weather map here, this is this morning at 8 o'clock. The major weather feature for us is this area of high pressure up over eastern Ontario. That moved in here yesterday and brought the cooler weather of the last 24 or so hours. There is a weather system off to our south. It's actually a long frontal boundary with a couple weak areas of low pressure on it, and that actually has some precipitation associated with it, primarily in areas to the west and south of Michigan. And because of the high pressure and because of the very, very dry air associated with that high pressure, that's where it's going to stay. We might see some sprinkles down in the far southwestern part of the state here during the day today, but basically everyone else will remain dry. You might even see some virga, which is precipitation actually falling out of the cloud, but evaporating before it hits the ground. That I wouldn't be surprised to see that as well. Most of this precip will all shift to the southeast, and again, away from Michigan here by later this evening. So where does that leave us? Well, if you look up here at the very top, there's a cold front approaching here. It's in central Canada right now. That's the leading edge of this Arctic air mass that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation here. And that's going to be here by late Thursday and into Friday and bring even colder air. Here's the weather forecast map for Thursday morning, 8 o'clock. And you can see by that point in time, the front has made it down into lower Michigan. There will be the chance for maybe a couple showers as that front goes through. But again, we're dealing with very, very dry air. There's no Gulf of Mexico influx, anything for it to work with. And odds are, given how cold this air mass is, that if it does start to precipitate, maybe it starts as rain, but it probably will end in frozen form. There will be mostly snow flurries, I think, would be the best guess here later on today, Thursday, and continuing on the day on Friday. There's even a chance we could see a little bit of lake enhancement during the day on Friday. But just up above here, up again in central Canada, looks like up in northern Manitoba, that's the center of this air mass, and it moves down towards the south and into the Great Lakes just to our north here over the weekend. It sets a stage for several days of unusually or abnormally cold conditions. And in that regard, these are forecast right now, the best guess for minimum temperatures for on the left panel here. This is Friday morning, the 8th. Middle panel is Saturday morning, the 9th, and then finally Sunday morning, the 10th. I should mention it also here in northern parts of the state, we saw frost and freezing conditions here in some locations even this morning. That will be the case also tomorrow, Wednesday morning, and even possibly on Thursday morning as well. But I think that will definitely be confined primarily to interior areas of the northern parts of the state. The greater threat will materialize again overnight, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Right now, looks like primarily we would be looking at temperatures anywhere from near freezing in the warmest locations to the mid and upper 20s. The potential is there, though, given how cold and how dry the air mass is. If we do see calm or clear calm weather develop overnight, and right now that's a little iffy on whether that'll happen. There may still be a little bit of breeze or some clouds to keep things a little bit stirred up. But if we do see clear calm conditions, we could go several degrees colder than that. Right now, best guess is the coldest conditions we'll see during this outbreak will be overnight Friday into Saturday morning. That's the one in the middle here. And we could see again some low 30s, which would be near records for the date. Again, a testament to just how unusual this air mass is. In terms of precip, not a whole lot to talk about. Most of precip totals, and it's even, I think, a little bit generous here with the totals. We're looking at a relatively very dry week. And even if we do see some precip, it's not going to amount to anything in terms of water equivalent. The totals here through next Tuesday, the 12th, you can see from the vast majority of Michigan, less than 1/10 of an inch. I think that's a pretty good bet. After Thursday, Friday, I mentioned the chance for some flurries. After that, the next chance may be by the end of the day, Sunday or early next week. And again, given the air mass that we're in, there could certainly be some snowfall involved with that precipitation, but nothing heavy expected, at least during the next week. And then beyond that, a couple of messages. One is that the very, very winter-like pattern that we're in, and you can see the upper air jet stream pattern here. This is a classic cold air pattern for the upper Midwest and the East, with a big trough carved out over Hudson Bay and into the northern part of the United States. That's been there for the last few weeks and is expected at least for another week. And I think that's one of the take-home here messages. No real changes. Mean temperatures are forecast. Both the 6 to 10 day and 8 to 14 day outlook timeframes are essentially the same. Strong likelihood of below normal mean temperatures. That's in the upper right here. And then normal to below normal precipitation totals. That's we've seen a lot of that recently. But there is, I think, an important message. At the end of the medium range guidance, we do see definite signs of a moderation in this pattern, probably during the third week of May. And it isn't anything dramatic where we would flip-flop from cold and dry to summer in a 24-hour period, nothing like that, but more of some kind of a moderation where we get more west to east jet stream flow across the lower 48. And that would definitely help moderate our temperatures back to near normal. Our normal high temperatures for much of the state right now are into the 60s. So it just gives you a little bit of an idea how far below we are. We're looking at mostly highs here in the 40s and 50s for the next few days. And late in the week, some parts in the northern part of the state will be pushed to get above 40. So extremely unusual for this late in the season. One last chart here, and that is we have an updated version of our monthly outlook. These are issued twice per month from the NOAA's Climate Prediction Center. And the outlook for May initially in the middle of last month had called for the equal chances. That's the EC designation here. Basically no forecast direction for either mean temperatures or precipitation. But given all of what you've just seen, when the medium range forecast guidance, they revised, this is issued, the revision is at the end of the month. So at the end of last week, this revision came out, and no big surprise, colder and drier than normal. And again, that was courtesy of that most recent guidance that you've seen. And the expectations that it would continue at least probably through the middle of the month. And right now, that still looks like a good bet, with, again, possibly that gradual change beginning during the third week. So that's the current thinking on where we are right now. But cold and dry is certainly our forecast direction, but maybe this will be the last full week of that. Precip totals certainly well below a quarter of an inch, and then maybe finally by about the 20th or so, we start to see maybe some moderation in our temperatures. And that's all I've got here. If anyone has any questions. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Jeff. If you just want to, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, so cold. I'm looking forward to the week when maybe you don't mention the snow flurries in your forecast, since we're going into the second week of June soon. And
maybe by the time we get to, I was going to say, we start mentioning June, maybe we'll drop the snow. So
slip of the tongue, but hopefully by the time we do get to June, there's no more snow flurries in the forecast and these temperatures in the 20s. It also really occurred to me when listening to this in the drier than normal, just remembering back a year ago how wet we were in the spring and how many problems we were having just from the turf side we work in to agriculture, just trying to get crops in the field.
And that is a major difference from last year. With the field crops folks, I've had numerous conversations here over the last week and a half, and with that drier area especially the eastern lower, there's been a lot of work that's done and more that will take place. Yes, it's cold or cooler than normal, but the soils have drained and dried off because of this drier than normal weather. So that at least gives people an opportunity. We didn't have that opportunity last year. Obviously, it was a fourth wettest spring in Michigan history, which is never a positive thing here. So that is a difference, and then maybe finally we will see some changes in temperature here in a not too distant future.
I've talked about this in the past on this with you, and one thing that I think this cold weather is kind of going to be interesting to see what effect it has on us in the turf industry, is especially all of our professional applicators that got delayed in making their crabgrass pre-emergence herbicide applications. With these temperatures you're talking about, those soil temps are going back down again. So I don't know if we're going to get kind of some sporadic hit and misses with crabgrass coming out this year or not. I guess it depends how warm it gets in June and July.
It's going to be an interesting field test for some of these materials. The other thing that's really noticeable to me, just this extended bloom of some of the forsythia. There's some other species and some flowers. I don't remember seeing a bloom this long. It's just been seemingly forever because of the cool temperatures. The phenology is sort of in a suspended state here, and we typically don't see that very often.
Yeah, definitely some interesting things. So just want to thank you again for coming on and providing an update for us, and hopefully we'll see you again next week with some warmer weather.
Very good. We'll try to work on that forecast for next week, but thanks for having me here.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.